Not yet, Cary. Not yet, Cary. Okay, Cary. Now.
Hi. Been seeing me in your dreams?
You say movie star. Cary Grant epitomizes that persona. It fit him.
First of all, he was the most beautiful-looking human being. The camera loved him.
But it's something about my face.
It's a nice face.
Cary Grant is the ideal fantasy figure, the absolute essence of glamour and sophistication, attractiveness, and smarts.
You're losing your eye. You used to be able to pitch better than that. Hello?
He had such fun in performing, and you could see that in the performance. He was so full of joy, and you could see it in his body, you could see it on his face. He just let it all out.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It never looked like he was acting, but he was acting. You thought that was Cary Grant, off-screen and on-screen.
Watching Cary in a film, it seems effortless. It seems he's playing himself. What looked easy was a terrible emotional complication for him.
I think he was a street fighter. I trusted him, and I fell in love with him. I was unable really to cope with him.
We're all only human, you know. You, all of you, with your sophisticated ideas. Ain't it awful?
When you talk to Cary, you never could get past the Cary Grant persona.
Dry your eyes, baby. It's out of character.
He keeps you on your toes. He keeps you edgy. You just never feel relaxed with him entirely. He's too dangerous, too smart.
He was a work in progress. Hollywood had given him a name, but he was the person who was going to transform himself from Archie Leach to Cary Grant.
Everybody wanted to be Cary Grant. Cary said, no, even I'd like to be Cary Grant. There was no way he could possibly embody all the facets that he portrayed.
For more than half my 58 years, I have cautiously peered from behind the facade of a man known as Cary Grant. The protection of that facade proved both an advantage and a disadvantage. If I couldn't see out, how could anyone see in?
People wanted to be associated with Cary. They wanted to be a part of him in some way or another, whether it be that they wanted him to be Jewish because they were Jewish, they wanted him to be gay because they were gay, so that they could have been in some tiny, tiny little part of his life.
It is much more difficult to take a hold of his persona, his career, nail it down than people realize. That's why he was so clever about never really giving interviews, never talking about himself, never letting anyone penetrate.
The one exception was a series of autobiographical essays Grant wrote in 1963.
You know where I grew up? In a one-room shack with a dirt floor. You talk about this side of your family and that side of your family. As far as I know, we only had one side, and it was awful poor.
I was born in Bristol, England, in 1904. My family name is Leach, to which was added Archibald Alexander, with no opportunity for me to protest.
Basically, it hadn't been a very happy childhood. His parents were not happily married.
They were named Elias and Elsie Leach. My father earned his money pressing suits and progressed too slowly to satisfy my mother's dreams.
They'd rowed about everything apparently. He always felt that he'd been responsible.
My parents did not seem particularly happy together, and I seemed to be caught in a subtle battle which eventually took residence inside my own character.
Returning home from school one day, a 9-year-old Grant discovers that his mother is gone.
He was told that his mother had gone to the seaside, and she never came back. He was filled with guilt that he'd done something.
There was a void in my life, a sadness of spirit that affected each daily activity. There was no further explanation of Mother's absence.
His father also had an affair with another woman and had a child with another woman, so it was very difficult for him in many ways.
Miserable at school and with little parental supervision, Grant cuts class to attend local stage shows. Eager to belong, his constant presence and sheer persistence lands him a job as a lighting apprentice at the Empire Theatre.
The Saturday matinee was in full swing when I arrived backstage, and that's when I knew. What other life could there be but that of an actor? They were classless and cheerful. They traveled and toured. I had a place to be, and people let me be there.
He learned about the Pender troupe while he was working, and he wanted to join the group, so he sent Bob Pender a letter and signed his father's name.
Pender got the letter, accepted Cary, and then, of course, all hell broke loose because the father didn't know where Cary had gone, eventually traced him, and he was, of course, returned and went back to school, and then was eventually expelled from school and finally went running back again happily to the Pender group.
They traveled all through Great Britain to all of the provinces. This is where he learned pantomime and juggling and pratfalls. It's where he learned his timing, something that he carried with him through the rest of his career.
In 1920, the Pender troupe sails for America to play New York's Hippodrome Theatre.
To me, it was extraordinary that this kid had gone with the Pender group to New York, and then when they went back to England, he stayed on. He was only 18 years old, all by himself.
It was very tough. He hardly had any money at all. He was doing virtually anything he could do, including walking on stilts to promote Coney Island and selling ties on the street corners. I mean, literally anything.
All the while, a determined Grant auditions endlessly and slowly begins to book jobs on the vaudeville circuit.
I strove to make everything I did at least appear relaxed. Perhaps by relaxing outwardly, I could eventually relax inwardly. Sometimes I even began to enjoy myself on stage.
Now under contract by the Hammerstein organization, it is not until 1927 that he appears in Golden Dawn, his first of many Broadway productions.
He was now a leading man on Broadway, and his friends then became Jock Whitney and Henry Ford. He'd be around somebody that he'd admire, and he'd learn. I dare say he learned from these playboys in New York who were all rich, came from good families, knew how to dress, knew how to behave.
Grant absorbs all he can from high society, while continuing to perform in season after season of operettas, dramas, and light comedy. He had now been performing on the stage for almost half his life. And in 1929, Grant is asked to do a screen test.
When he took his first screen test for Fox, he was rejected.
He was told he didn't have a hope, his neck was too thick, and he was a little bow-legged. So whoever that was maybe a little short-sighted.
Undaunted by Fox's refusal, a resourceful Grant is hired by Paramount for $150 for 6 days' work in his first screen appearance.
Spackers in English? No? Well, I speak and serve good Chinese to you. You and me, we chop suey through the park. We chow mein. Yes? Hong Kong? Ping pong? What do you say?
From this inauspicious start, Grant is convinced that he has a future in film. He drives to Los Angeles and after meeting the head of Paramount at a party, is signed within a matter of weeks. The studio immediately requests that Archie Leach change his name. Taking Cary from his character in the play Nicky and his surname from a list of studio suggestions, Cary Grant signs a 5-year contract. Almost immediately, Grant is given prominent roles alongside Paramount's leading ladies, including Carole Lombard and Marlene Dietrich.
There's where he's learning his movie craft. He's learning to listen, to respond to the leading lady, to know where the focus is supposed to be.
Grant is 29 when V.O.S. casts him as her love interest in She Done Him Wrong.
Oh, well, guess I'm taking your time.
What do you suppose my time's for? Sit down. He's not only a pretty boy in the Mae West movies, he's like upholstery. You know, he's just there to be her straight man.
That's it. Loosen up. Unbend. You'll feel better.
He was very stiff. He said, "You notice how my hand is in my pocket," because I didn't know what to do with my hands.
One of the few people that he totally disliked was Mae West, who always claimed that she had made him a star. And he said, "Listen, I'd made half a dozen movies before that." So, you know, he felt he had his own credentials. He didn't need Mae West yammering on about how she'd made him a star.
Come up again. Anytime.
Thanks, I will.
Nonetheless, She Done Him Wrong is the young actor's biggest hit to date. After appearing in 8 films in less than a year, Grant turns his attention towards his personal life.
Hello, darling. Have a nice trip.
Lovely.
Hey, where'd you get the flowers?
From an admirer.
Not bad.
The first time Cary met Virginia Sherrill was at one of the parties at the Marion Davis house. She was a Chicago socialite, beautiful, had some fame because she played the little blind girl in Charlie Chaplin's City Lights.
After a brief engagement, Grant marries Sherrill in 1934.
Cary's first wife, Virginia Sherrill, made a remark which I think is very apropos. I was in love with Cary. Cary was in love with himself. I didn't stand a chance.
I doubt if either of us was capable of relaxing sufficiently to trust the happiness we might have had. My possessiveness and fear of losing her brought about the very condition it feared, the loss of her.
The couple divorce after less than a year of marriage, and Grant returns to the Malibu beach house that he'd been sharing with fellow actor Randolph Scott. Although Grant was now earning a comfortable living as a working actor, he had yet to give a standout performance.
He was a successful, young, leading man who was nice-looking but had no particular identity.
You can see him evolve in the movies in the first few years. He's a straight leading man, perfectly adequate, likable, almost too good-looking, without a lot of depth. And there's glimmers in a picture here, a picture there, but it explodes in Sylvia Scarlett.
Oh, there's plenty of room for both of us here. Come on, get your pajamas. Let's get curled up. But what?
Grant is loaned out to RKO to star opposite Katharine Hepburn in George Cukor's Sylvia Scarlett.
Jimmy Monkley, that's me. Little friend of all the world, nobody's enemy but me own.
Yeah, I can tell that by the look of you.
Hey! He meets Kate.
Oh, you're a bit ticklish, aren't you?
Who's playing a boy in disguise.
Well, toodaloo. See you later.
He played this sublime Cockney, absolutely relaxed. He's himself, and he's funny.
He knew what this character was, and he gave a marvelous performance.
Gentleman adventurer. One of the Orcs.
Hawks? Oh, hawks.
Yeah, Orcs, the word Orcs. Sparrows and Orcs. That's humanity. The Orcs bossed over the sparrows. That's nature. Nah, you want to be a sparrow? Look at them all around you. What are they? Mere slaves. Me? I'm out to beat the system. Easy come, easy go. That's my motto.
The film is a dismal failure for the director and his star. Yet Grant emerges not only unscathed, but more popular than ever.
The fact that Cary was being utterly dishonest, charmingly unscrupulous, seemed to fit Cary.
He got the right part. He suddenly flowered. He suddenly felt the ground under his feet.
Exhilarated after working with Cukor and Hepburn, Grant returns to his home studio with little enthusiasm.
He quickly became discontented with his arrangement at Paramount because his roles were uninspired and the projects were not very interesting. So he became an independent, which was really unheard of back in those days.
Extremely brave, I think, at that stage, and is a perfect example of how bright Cary was. He knew what he was capable of doing, and he wanted to change the mix a tiny bit. And he was extremely successful, got a percentage of the gross, and he actually asked for a percentage of some of the films.
I remember once talking to him about Penny Serenity. He says, "Oh yeah, I just got a check on that." And I thought, Jesus, that was 1941. He had already got a piece of the action.
He got where he was by working very, very hard. Most self-made men, they say you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and Cary said that to me. And I said, first of all, how many people in the world with bootstraps look like you?
Perfectly aware that his looks have been an asset, Grant is eager to show the audience what he is capable of. He jumps at the chance to work with director Leo McCarey and Irene Dunn in The Awful Truth.
Well, excuse me, what do you say?
I say I'm glad to know you.
How can you be glad to know me? I know how I'd feel if I was sitting with a girl and her husband walked in.
I'll bet you do.
The Awful Truth was the birth of the Cary Grant we came to know and love.
He was wonderful physically. He could do wonderful pratfalls and slapstick. The fact that he threw his whole being into it, no holds barred.
It was the first time that you saw a leading man in that kind of comedy really being funny, really funny. You know, it was usually up to the woman.
May I have a drink? Certainly. I had 3 or 4 before I got here, but they're beginning to wear off, and you know how that is.
The Awful Truth is an Irene Dunn movie. She's the center of it. She's on screen more than he is.
I can't possibly interpret this as jealousy.
I've taken a definite turn for the better. Nothing's gonna hurt me anymore.
She could not do the part she does to the level she does it without a partner of his stature and ability.
Though this was regarded as his breakthrough role, Grant is initially resistant to his director.
The way McCarey worked was he would improvise the scenes. When he couldn't think of what to do, he'd say, okay, hold it a second. He'd go and play the piano for a while and kind of think about it. Then he'd come back and say, okay, I got an idea.
At the end of the first day, Irene was crying. She didn't know what kind of a part she was playing. Cary said, let me out of this, and I'll do another picture for nothing. That's the way we made the picture. We never had a script.
The chaos worked. McCarey would go on to win an Oscar, and Grant became a star.
The performance that he was afraid of giving in The Awful Truth turned him into the Cary Grant that we all know.
Cary caught on quickly. It was right in his groove, his kind of comedy, of humor. He could laugh with you as you were watching him. He knew you were laughing, and he was encouraging it.
And that is what it's all about, falling in love by being funny with each other. He's really the only male star that was made by screwball comedy, because usually that genre, that style, made women stars. It didn't make male stars.
Grant is now one of the most sought-after actors in Hollywood. Consumed by work, he rarely returns to Bristol, staying in touch with his remaining family by mail. Months after his father's death in 1935, a lawyer handling the estate writes Grant with news. His mother is still alive.
I learned that she had experienced a nervous breakdown and been taken to an institution. I was a full-grown man living in America, thousands of miles away in California. I was known by most people of the world by sight and by name, yet not to my own mother.
Reunited, mother and son begin an uneasy relationship.
Cary had brought her a wonderful fur coat he had made for her in New York, and Cary told me that she looked at him and she said, Archie, I've never seen so many wrinkles in my life. And it devastated him. Devastated him.
Grant throws himself back into work, and his next film reunites him with Katharine Hepburn in the story of a scientist, a madcap heiress, and a lost dinosaur bone. Bringing Up Baby is Grant's introduction into the world of director Howard Hawks.
Cary Grant was a little bit nervous about the part, didn't quite know how to approach it at first. And Hawks said, think of Harold Lloyd. And in that line, he gave Cary Grant the Harold Lloyd glasses.
Hey, that's my ball. Just a minute.
He took it and he ran with it.
Oh, dear.
You shouldn't do that, you know.
But that... What shouldn't I do?
Talk while someone's shooting.
Yes,
Well, anyway, I forgive
boys.
you because I got a good shot.
And he runs into this harebrained heiress who is completely impervious to what anyone else is feeling.
Will you get out of my car?
Will you get off my running board?
This is my running board!
All right, honey. Stay
She hears what he says, but she doesn't listen, even though Katharine Hepburn is driving him crazy, he realizes she's bringing him alive in a way he's never been alive before.
You're angry, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm. The love impulse in man frequently reveals itself in terms of conflict.
Excuse me, the what impulse?
Love impulse.
The back of Katharine Hepburn's dress being torn off was come up with by Cary Grant.
I was only trying to be nice.
Thank you.
He had been first row of the balcony at the giant Roxy Theater in New York City. His fly was open, and it got caught on the back of this woman's dress. Instinctively, he just kind of got behind her and followed her out. He mentioned this to Hawks. Hawks loved this and came up with one of those great, great sequences in American cinema.
Well, get behind me.
I am behind
Well, get closer.
I can't get any closer. Now, you ready? Now, be calm. Left foot first.
All right.
It gets sillier and sillier, more like the Midsummer Night's Dream with all sorts of misconceptions, and they're out in the woods. And it's a kind of surreal screwball comedy.
Come on, David, come on down. Come on. Oh, David, make him get down.
I suppose you'd like me to climb up and push him down. Oh.
Well, maybe we better sing. I can't give you any... Well, sing, David.
Oh.
I can't give you anything but love, baby.
Cary Grant was concerned that he was changing or dropping his characterization that he established early on, and Hawks pointed out to him, he said, no, you're changing.
No! Go away, have the time. No, I won't leave you. I love you. What?
You are actually changing under the influence of this Katharine Hepburn character so that you are becoming a little bit more normal.
I've just discovered that was the best day I ever had in my whole life.
David, you don't mean it.
I never had a better time.
Even though the impression that he had is that it was a destructive influence in his life. That's one of the things that makes it so extraordinary, is that everybody is loony. It's a one-of-a-kind kind of movie.
Oh, David, can you ever forgive me? You can, and you still love me.
Susan, that...
You do? Oh, David.
Oh, dear. Oh, my.
It will be 4 years before Hepburn begins her historic screen partnership with Spencer Tracy. For the moment, she has found her perfect match in Grant. Summed up by the New York Times as two of the screen's greatest actors giving comedy everything they had, including a genuinely acrobatic intelligence, they begin work on Holiday, once again for director George Cukor.
Linda.
Holidays expresses the kind of joie de vivre that Cary had in life. You get a sense of that in that picture.
When he enters this enormous mansion where Katharine Hepburn lives,
Judas.
He's overwhelmed by it, and he has a kind of loose, shambling walk, like he's still a country boy whose clothes didn't quite fit. You accept him as a natural, free spirit who's trying to attain some respectability and earn some money, but that's not really who he is.
I've been working since I was 10. I want to find out why I'm working. The answer can't be just to pay bills or to pile up more money. Even if you do, the government's going to take most of it.
Yes, but what is the answer?
Well, I don't know. That's what I intend to find out.
Here he is in Holiday challenging the ongoing attitude of the times. I mean, that's a figure that belongs more in the 1960s or 1970s.
During filming, Grant is able to combine a growing dramatic skill with his characteristic light touch.
He developed this style of comedy and this dash, this dapper thing. You see, he didn't depend on his looks. He wasn't a narcissist. He acted as though he were just an ordinary young man. That made it all the more appealing.
When things get tough, when I feel a worry coming on, you know what I do. There, and then the worries are over.
Fulfilling a boyhood fantasy, Grant leaves the confines of the soundstage for George Stephen's Gunga Din. Thrilled at the chance to carouse in the style of his idol, Douglas Fairbanks Sr., Grant stars alongside the icon's son. The spirited atmosphere on the set even extends itself to one important casting decision.
Cary said that he was interested in Gunga Din, and I said, well, which part did you want me to play? And he said, we'll toss a coin. Heads, you play this, and tails, I play that. And it was decided in as simple a fashion as that. And that's how it happened that I won the girl.
Second only to Gone with the Wind as the year's biggest moneymaker, Grant would often count the film as one of his favorites.
Gunga Din really was the Star Wars of its time. It captivated kids in that same way.
Hey, take your hands off that man.
Grant now adds action hero to his resume.
Cary Grant was always Cary Grant, but different textures of Cary Grant. Within his parameters and within that perimeter, there's a lot of stuff. He had the great ability of being able to play everything from slapstick fall-down comedy to dramatic stuff with a sense of danger.
Director Howard Hawks casts Grant in his first dramatic leading role, 1939's Only Angels Have Wings.
There he is! Joe! Joe! Pull him up! Pull him up!
I've known a lot of flyers, and I've seen a lot of forced landings, and they don't sit around and moan about what's going to happen when they hit the ground. It doesn't do them any good to dramatize it.
Hardened by the constant danger, Grant's character is unyielding in the film's most celebrated scene.
Haven't you any feelings? Don't you realize he's dead?
Who's dead?
Yeah, who's dead?
Joe!
Joe?
Well, who's Joe?
Anybody know Joe?
There's a kind of ethos of stoicism which grows out of male companionship of men doing something they know is dangerous. The only way to get through extreme danger is with a kind of high spirit, and we'll stick together, and that's why we'll get through it.
You...
Wait a minute, you little fool. Why don't you use your head? Oh, come on, stop it.
I don't know how you can act like this with that poor kitty.
Yeah, I know, he's dead.
Yes, he's dead.
That's right. And he's been dead about 20 minutes, and all the weeping and wailing in the world won't make him any deader 20 years from now. If you feel like bawling, how do you think we feel?
It's an incredible performance. If you didn't have someone as magnetic and likable as Cary Grant, it would be possibly a very tough character to take, because he treats people very callously. He treats life very callously. But Hawks knew how to use movie stars, and he very, very shrewdly used Cary Grant. I don't know who else could have pulled off that part.
In direct contrast to his film persona, Grant's off-screen living arrangement with Randolph Scott continued to fuel rumors over the exact nature of their relationship.
Immediately they would say, oh my goodness, you know, these two were living together and there must have been something going on between the two of them. It wasn't the case at all. In fact, the house that they had down on the beach was known to have women going in and out like running water, just as the one that Niven had alcohol going in and out like running water. I mean, it was a different time.
A series of early publicity photos and the fact that Grant returns to live with Scott between marriages confirms the idea for many that the two were lovers.
They were very good friends, and those photos were taken in a house that they were sharing, and who knows who said, you know, well, maybe you could go a little closer for the sake of the shot, and suddenly, you know, these two are living together as man and wife as opposed to just as friends.
Indifferent to the gossip, Grant saved the newspaper clippings and mementos charting their friendship in his scrapbooks. Scott signs a menu from a memorable dinner party, "To my spouse, Cary."
For goodness sakes, why would I believe that Cary was homosexual when we were busy fucking? Maybe he was bisexual. He lived 43 years before he met me. I don't know what he did.
Aware but indifferent to the rumors, the two even managed to poke fun at themselves in My Favorite Wife.
Once a rumor starts, it is just perpetuated. Plus, as Cary would say, sometimes if no one can find anything bad to say about you, you are a tightwad or you're homosexual.
Grant and Scott remain lifelong friends, and though the rumors never fade, no damage is done to either man's career. Over 30 years will pass before Grant finally addresses the issue.
Listen, Walter.
Listen, I made a great reporter out of you, Hildy, but you won't be half as good on any other paper, and you know it. We're a team, that's what we are. You need me, and I need you, and the paper needs both of us.
Sold, American!
Grant and director Hawkes reunite for His Girl Friday. Thrown into the chaos is Rosalind Russell in a remake of the stage classic The Front Page. The film will become renowned for the sheer speed of its dialogue.
I didn't think it was particularly fast, and in order to make His Girl Friday, which was the same story, faster, we started using overlapping dialogue, and we stepped it up about 20%.
Walter, you're wonderful in a loathsome sort of way. Now, will you please be quiet just long enough for me to tell you what I came up here to say? I have a lunch date already. I cannot break it. Will you take your hands off me? What are you playing, osteopath?
Temper.
You can't have two people talking, saying important things at the same time. They have to have a few words in front and a few words behind that can be lost. And out in the clear comes the stuff that you want to hear.
I need that.
Answer me, Hildy. You don't, do you?
No. Take all those Miss America pictures off page 6.
Hildy, tell me. Please tell me the truth.
Oh, wait.
If you ever loved me, Hildy.
Now, look here, my good man.
You shut up, Burns.
Now, how can I do anything with
You're doing all this to her. I know that. She wanted to get away from you and everything you stand for, but you were too smart. You caught her and changed her mind.
The script was 180 pages. The movie's 90 minutes. That means they were shooting 30 seconds a page. That stuff was going by fast.
When Rosalind Russell realized how brilliant Cary Grant was at ad-libs, she hired this writer to come up with some lines for her for the given situations that she knew that she would be facing in the shooting.
Well, would you mind if I sat down?
There's been a lamp burning in the window for you, honey. Here.
Oh, I jumped out that window a long time ago, Walter.
He's malevolent as Walter Burns. He's such a range of mockery.
Oh, Walter.
Teasing.
I don't want to brag, but I've still got the dimple, and in the same place.
Taunting.
Listen, you insignificant, square-toed, pimple-headed spy. Do you realize what you're doing?
Grant himself, apart from the character, is lovable because he's obviously enjoying this.
All right, Hilda, you win. I'm licked.
The chemistry Grant is able to establish with yet another leading lady is undeniable, and the film is a resounding success. After a string of box office failures, some of which included Grant, Katharine Hepburn returned to the stage, finding her signature role as Tracy Lord in The Philadelphia Story. Realizing this was her entree back into films, Hepburn purchased the screen rights. Requesting her dream cast, she was told that Clark Gable wasn't interested and Spencer Tracy unavailable. Instead, Hepburn was offered Jimmy Stewart and $150,000 to find her third co-star. Grant gladly accepted.
The Philadelphia Story is a movie about giving Katharine Hepburn her comeuppance. It's built around that. It's built to sort of throw water in her face and sort of slap her down. But he has to do it in a way that it's not overbearing, where it's really not too preachy, where you don't think, God, where you don't deserve her, which is a kind of a tough thing to do. It's a really deft piece of playing.
No, you're slipping, Red. I used to be afraid of that look. The withering glance of the goddess.
I didn't think that alcohol would... Oh, shut up.
And he is, in his own way, despite the sarcasm and the mockery and everything, loyal to her and shows that he knows her and wants her. He needs to be asked again, though, because he's screwed up the marriage.
For instance, she never had any understanding of my deep and gorgeous thirst.
That was your problem.
Granted. But you took on that problem with me when you took me, Red. You were no helpmate there. You were a scold.
It was disgusting. It made you so unattractive.
That's a really hard scene to play because it's about explaining who you are, which is the worst thing any actor can be forced to do.
And strength is her religion, Mr. Connor. She finds human imperfection unforgivable. When I gradually discovered that my relationship to her was supposed to be not that of a loving husband and a good companion, but... Oh, never mind.
Say it.
But that of a kind of high priest to a virgin goddess. Then my drinks grew deeper and more frequent, that's all.
Grant is perfectly at ease with Hepburn and director George Cukor, free enough to bring unexpected depth as well as spontaneity to his performance.
Oh, I wonder if I might borrow a drink.
Certainly. Coast to Newcastle. Yeah.
There is a moment in Philadelphia Story that was, according to Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart, was improvised. There's a scene when Jimmy Stewart comes to Cary Grant's house and he's drunk, and Jimmy Stewart hiccups.
Excuse me.
That was thrown in. You can see that Jimmy is amused and Cary looks down. He was amused that Jimmy was amused. They almost broke up, but that's unusual.
See here, Dexter Haven, you have unsuspected depth.
Oh, thanks, old chap.
No matter how funny he was being, there was a sense of a kind of serious person behind it. A real person, really interesting, forceful person.
Oh, Dexter. I've done the most terrible thing to you.
To me? Oh, I doubt that. I doubt it very much, dear.
You don't know. You don't know.
Well, maybe I shouldn't, huh?
But you must. You've got to. I couldn't stand it if you didn't. Dexter, what am I going to do?
But why to me, darling? Why ask me? Why do I come into it anymore?
She doesn't need to go off with Jimmy Stewart. She needs to return to the now non-alcoholic C. Dexter Haven, who is the person that she belongs with.
Dexter, are you sure?
Not the least bit risky, will you?
You bet. You didn't do it just to soften the blow.
No, Tracy.
No, to save my face.
Oh, it's a nice little face.
Oh, Dexter, I'll be yours now. I'll promise to be yours.
Be whatever you like. You're my redhead. Are you all set?
All set.
The film is a hit, and Hepburn is back on top. When the Oscar nominees are announced, only Grant is overlooked. The film is selected in every major category, and Jimmy Stewart wins as Best Actor of the Year.
Cary gave his entire salary from the Philadelphia Story to British War Relief. He worked a great deal for war relief programs, and he visited army camps, and he toured with other actors and actresses.
Too old to serve, Grant would continue to donate portions of his salary throughout World War II. Now 36, Grant is paired once again with Irene Dunne and director George Stevens in Penny Serenade.
Penny Serenade is one of only 2 films in which Cary Grant received an Oscar nomination, and significantly, he didn't play the Cary Grant persona in either one of them.
Have you got a Victrola inside?
Why, yes, of course.
Would you let me hear this one? Otherwise, I'll have to take it home and imagine how it sounds.
Don't you have a machine at home?
No.
Well, why on earth did you buy 27?
He plays an ordinary man. There is no tuxedo in this role. He is a guy who doesn't achieve much. But the wonderful scene, and unlike anything else in his career, is when he confronts an unsympathetic judge to beg to keep the little baby.
Look, Judge, we've had her over a year now. Why, we've walked the floor with her when she had the colic. We've lost nights of sleep worrying every time she cut a tooth. We've gone through everything. Everything that real parents have is one of their own.
It's a very powerful scene. Heartfelt, clearly. He loved to make movies about children. Many of the productions he set up for his own company had children involved.
Look, I'm not a big shot now. I'll do anything. I'll work for anybody. I'll beg. I'll borrow. Please, Judge, I'll sell anything I've got until I get going again. Well, she'll never go hungry. She'll never be without clothes, not as long as I've got 2 good hands to help me.
A disappointed Grant would lose the Oscar to Gary Cooper for his performance in Sergeant York. But intent on exploring new roles, Grant begins production on Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion in the spring of 1941. This will be the first of 4 films with the director, who delights in unconventional casting, enlisting Grant to play a suspected murderer.
What did you think I was trying to do? Kill you? Nothing less than murder could justify such violent self-defense. Look at you.
Let me go.
On the heels of her Oscar-nominated performance in Rebecca, 22-year-old Joan Fontaine co-stars.
It's based on a novel in which a rather shady lady killer marries an heiress, is obviously a fortune hunter, and it leads up to his actually killing his wife.
Unusual for a Hitchcock film, there is a great deal of tension on the set. The script is incomplete, production drags on for 5 months, and Grant and Fontaine do not get along.
Suspicion is a botch, but he's very exciting in it. It's one of the few films in which he's downright unpleasant.
Johnny, get some water, quick.
It won't help. I've seen this happen before. There's nothing much you can do about it. No, that's no use, darling. It'll either kill him or it'll go away by itself.
But they never quite made up their mind about who this character was supposed to be. They never made the kind of basic decisions you make about a character when you tell an actor what the part is about.
What the devil do you know about business?
Oh, very little. I was only...
Suppose Beaky had taken you seriously. You'd have ruined the whole scheme. You realize that?
Yes, but if it weren't any good.
That's my business, not yours. If I say it's good, it's good.
Grant's character, a perplexing blend of charm and menace, poses a dilemma for Hitchcock and RKO, forcing them to shoot two endings. In the original novel, Grant's character gives his wife a glass of poisoned milk. Before drinking it, she hands him an envelope. The letter inside names Grant as her killer. The story ends as he happily strolls to the mailbox, unknowingly sealing his doom.
Hitch said, you can't do that. You can't have Cary Grant be a murderer, because it's Cary Grant.
Using a combination of new and previously shot scenes, an ending is patched together.
They're actually setting the entire movie on fire before your very eyes, because by negating what has come up until that point, it's an embarrassment.
Nonetheless, Grant's persona remains intact. Fontaine wins the Oscar for her role, and Suspicion becomes RKO's most profitable film of the year.
By the end of 1940 and coming into early 41, you see The Philadelphia Story, Penny Serenade, Suspicion. He can be a sophisticated comedy leading romantic man. He can be a suspected murderer that's a complex character. And he can be an ordinary, down-to-earth, simple family man. Now that's remarkable. And no one ever thinks about this with Grant. They have this one much more narrow idea of who he is on film.
Grant begins dating Woolworth heiress Barbara Hutton while shooting The Philadelphia Story. In early 1942, he becomes an American citizen and marries Hutton, all within 2 weeks. The press has a field day. America's richest woman has married America's biggest movie star, earning the couple the nickname Cash and Cary.
Cary was married to my cousin Barbara Hutton. And that's how I first met him. And I was about 16, I guess, or 17. She was very beautiful, very beautiful. She had these beautiful dark eyebrows and huge blue eyes. She was gorgeous.
Cary gravitated towards women of refinement. You see it now twice. Virginia Sherrill and now Barbara Hutton.
She was a difficult personality. She had a very difficult childhood. Her mother died when she was 8. Her father was an alcoholic. That was my father's brother.
The one thing that they had in common was the fact that neither one of them had the love nor the care of a mother.
A bright spot in the marriage is Lance Reventlow, Hutton's son from her previous marriage to a Danish count.
I was married to Barbara Hutton's son, and Cary was literally a father to him.
The victim of a bitter custody battle, Lance prefers Grant to his own father.
They had a wonderful relationship. Cary adored him and Lance adored Cary, and it was a deep relationship.
Despite Lance, Grant and Hutton's marriage quickly unravels as the two struggle with Grant's work ethic versus Hutton's constant need to be entertained.
Her friends didn't work. Most of them were sycophants. I knew some of those people later in my life, and he was right to not like them. They weren't that particularly terrific.
Our marriage had little foundation for a promising future. Our backgrounds were completely unalike. Perhaps that in itself was the initial attraction.
Cary and I talked about it many times, and he said, you know, when you have that much money, people treat you differently. And Cary was treated differently because he was an icon. The difference there is Cary knew why he was being treated differently. Barbara didn't.
The couple separate 2 years later, and in 1945, finally divorce.
But they certainly remained friends. I mean, she would call him right up to the time before she died, and Cary was always very happy to talk to her.
Grant's next project is his most personal. At his insistence, RKO not only agrees to produce None But the Lonely Heart, but to hire screenwriter Clifford Odets to direct as well.
Anything in the shop needs mending, Ma?
Nothing that needs your help, any sweets. Besides, it's Sunday.
Painting, polishing, doing a spot of gardening? Mean to do my best by you, ma love. Happy couple, aren't we?
None But the Lonely Heart with Ethel Barrymore, where he played a Cockney and she played his mum. It was very close to his origins, and it's an unrelentingly grim film.
In many ways, the part seemed to fit my nature better than the light-hearted fellows I was used to playing.
When he tried to expand and work with Clifford Odets, who was a close personal friend of his, and trying to embody something else. It's fascinating, too, because he tried to use that physicality of his in this really sort of swaggering, butch kind of fashion.
Ta-ra, chin. But ain't I lovely?
Proper dream you are.
And it's about working class squalor and despair. And the central situation is that he's come home to his mom at long last to be with her while she dies of cancer.
Clearly, Grant was playing a role written for someone half his age, affecting both the story and his performance. Ethel Barrymore wins the Oscar as Best Supporting Actress, and although nominated for Best Actor, Grant loses to Bing Crosby and is never nominated again.
It was a terrible flop, and he never looked back.
He took me to a preview of a movie, and he said the very important thing is that no matter what people think of the movie or anything, keep smiling. If you show that you're vulnerable and you show your feelings are hurt, you'll be destroyed, and you mustn't. So keep smiling.
There are 4 directors who had a real influence on the shaping of Cary Grant: Alfred Hitchcock, Leo McCarey, Howard Hawks, and George Cukor.
Each of those directors permitted me the release of improvisation during the rehearsal of each scene. It permitted me to discover how far I could go with confidence, while guided by their quiet, sensitive approval.
Leo McCarey gave him the pratfall comedy persona. Cukor adds the sophistication. Hawks gives the masculinity, the adventure, and then Hitchcock puts it all together and adds that little touch of mystery and insanity.
The director had learned his lesson with Suspicion. The Cary Grant persona had its limits. With Notorious, Hitchcock achieves the perfect balance. Grant stars with Ingrid Bergman as government agent T.R. Devlin.
There's one more drink left apiece. Shame about the ice.
What is?
Gone.
Who's gone?
The ice.
Notorious is one of Hitchcock's 2 or 3 best pictures, and it's one of Cary's most complicated performances.
For Hitchcock, there is no such thing as a straightforward love affair. And so, despite Devlin's feelings for Alicia, he gives her the task of seducing a Nazi criminal, and the audience watches as he struggles with his inner turmoil.
You land him. Find out what's going on inside his house, what the group around him is up to, and report to us.
I suppose you knew about this pretty little job of mine all the time.
No. I only just found out about it.
He's very angry at her for acquiescing in this plan a little too quickly, more quickly than he wants, and he treats her as a slut.
You can add Sebastian's name to my list of playmates.
Pretty fast work.
That's what you wanted, wasn't it?
Skip it.
He is a son of a bitch in this movie. I mean, he's manipulative, and he's cold-hearted, and it's chilling to watch how good he is at it.
Listen, you chalked up another boyfriend, that's all. No harm done.
I hate you.
There's no occasion to. You're doing good work.
What makes the movie romantic is that his mistreatment of her is brought out because he's absolutely crazy about her.
I couldn't see straight or think straight. I was a fat-headed guy full of pain. It tore me up not having you.
He didn't do that again after that movie, though. That it's like a kind of a blip in his career. And he went back to sort of being the more or less conventional Cary Grant. And you feel the loss.
Miss Delwagon says that middle-class people like us are all too prone to overlook...
Muriel, I know this is asking a lot, but just one morning I would like to sit down and have breakfast without social significance.
Jim, you really must take more interest in your children's education.
Can't squeeze blood from a turnip.
When I was growing up, the big Cary Grant films were things like Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer, and these were gigantic hits, and everybody responded to them.
I hope you like basketball.
Crazy about it.
I wrote a script called The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer. I got an Oscar for that original screenplay, and I'm convinced that I got it because of Cary. Because it was a comedy, and comedies usually aren't paid that much attention to by critics.
Now in his mid-40s, Grant is keenly aware of taking age-appropriate roles. Home, fatherhood, and daily life lead to a spate of uninspired yet popular films.
Well, there must be a girl somewhere who thinks it's a wonderful career just to have a home and babies, whose only thought is to make her husband happy.
And there were a lot of crude movies in that period, basically after Notorious, where it's just kind of Cary Grant trading on the audience goodwill, the fact that people would go out and see him in these movies. And movies were getting more interesting.
Marlon Brando, Elia Kazan, and James Dean are among those leading a generation of actors and directors into new territory.
I offended him because I'd seen him in a picture called The Bishop's Wife, and I said to him, "You are in a position now where you can choose the most wonderful movies. Why are you doing this?" He never answered because he was deeply offended, and I learned to keep my mouth shut.
Grant, reunited with director Howard Hawks, cannot overcome the dated Fountain of Youth premise of 1952's Monkey Business.
Well, all set?
Is your motor running?
Is yours?
Here you are, Doctor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Peabody. Just mail me the bill.
Certainly.
Takes a while to warm up.
Does me too.
Well, watch your head. I'll watch everything else.
He was basically still doing movies that you could have done in the 20s. These could have been silent two-reelers movies like Monkey Business or I Was a Male War Bride.
Hey, did you hear that? I must look pretty good.
Don't be silly. That was for me.
For you?
Of course.
I ought to punch him in the nose.
Henry, remember, you're a lady.
He comes from an era in which acting was a way to make a living, as opposed to being a way to express your inner demons. It was a way to feed yourself, a way to feed your family, a way to keep the wolf from the door.
But that's also why he's so easy to take over a long period of time, because even though he had fabulous qualities as an actor, he didn't want to squeeze the audience. He doesn't want to push you. It's his job to do something that's fun, not to change your life.
He was the commodity. You knew who you were going to see. If you wanted to be happy, you're going to go to see a Cary Grant movie.
And Cary Grant is asked to join the screen's immortals. Invited, that is, to make his imprint in the cement of Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood.
No matter what the critical response, Grant's films during this period never lose money at the box office.
Holiday season crowds line up around the block for the world premiere of the Radio City Music Hall's Christmas show. UI's new release, Operation Petticoat.
His most popular movie of his career was Operation Petticoat, which was basically a family service comedy, slightly risque.
Russell B. Downing, president of the Music Hall, presents an illuminated scroll honoring Grant as the famed New York Showplace's all-time favorite movie star and box office champion.
He didn't distinguish between those pictures that were terrible, like Operation Petticoat or Walk, Don't Run. I mean, those were pictures of him that were good because audiences went to them. A good movie to Cary Grant was a movie that made money.
Cary Grant's interest in money, whether in the workplace or in his personal life, had been a favorite Hollywood topic for years.
I remember walking down the street with Cary Grant near Mount Rushmore and people asking him for his autograph, and he charged 25 cents. And I thought, I don't do that. Maybe I should.
He watched every penny, and I think it was rooted in the childhood. If you were lower class, you were nothing. And he was not about to be nothing.
Irving Reese, who directed The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer, died and left a very young widow and two little children. Cary, who wasn't particularly friendly with Irving, gave Vanessa, his widow, $10,000. And I said, I understand you gave her some money. And he knew that I was kind of alluding to the fact that people said he didn't like spending money. He said, I like to pick my spots.
Though he is no longer as eager to take chances professionally, Grant's personal life is another matter.
Why don't you tell me all about yourself? Nice little intimate things that you've never told anyone else.
I met Cary on board the Queen Mary. It was absolutely marvelous. When I left the Queen Mary, I didn't think I'd ever see him again.
20 years his junior, actress Betsy Drake had just finished a successful stage run in London.
But when I left the ship, I didn't give him my telephone number. He didn't know my telephone number. He had to track me down.
Endlessly pursued by Grant, Drake soon came out to Los Angeles to join him. Having broken her first contract with producer Hal Wallace, Drake signed with RKO and was cast opposite Grant in her first film role.
How many have you?
Beg your pardon?
These. How many have you?
Why, none, fortunately.
Fortunately.
I'm not married.
We eloped so that there wouldn't be anybody bothering us.
However, married life took Drake by surprise.
He came from the first part of the 20th century. Wives were expected to behave a certain way. And Cary swallowed my life. I lost myself in trying to please him.
Don't you find that by accepting this interesting challenge, you're apt to neglect your husband?
In what way?
How many ways are there?
Well, I can assure you that whatever inconvenience he has been caused is temporary.
What I didn't know and what I learned later really was that Cary was tired of being the sex symbol. He wanted to play a father with children and change his entire image, and also this was a chance for him to make a picture with Betsy.
But after 2 films with Drake, Grant's interest in fatherhood remained firmly on the screen.
Cary knew from the very beginning I wanted children. He refused and said, I want to travel, there's so much I want to do. I really don't want a child.
The exception for Grant was Barbara Hutton's son, Lance.
We visited him. He was living with his governess and a dog on a ranch, ghost ranch in New Mexico. I made an 8mm movie with Lance and Cary called The Killer of Fossil Gulch.
The bond between the two had only grown stronger through the years.
In it, Cary was shot by Lance, and he did it so wonderfully. So I kept in both shots when I cut it. He wanted parents, and I was devoted to him, and I know Cary was.
Tragically, Lance would die in a plane crash in 1972 at the age of 36. It had been 6 years since the artistic triumph of Notorious. During this time, for reasons that still remain a mystery, Grant turns down choice projects such as Roman Holiday and Sabrina. His uncompromising professionalism even keeps him away from A Star is Born, directed by longtime friend George Cukor.
Judy wooed us. She was so desperate. But she kept after Cary. But Cary did not want to do it because Judy Garland was a drug addict. And Cary was a highly disciplined actor and expected you to show up on time and know your lines. And he didn't want to go through the experience.
Instead, Grant and Drake leave Hollywood, fueling rumors that he had decided to retire.
He never spoke to me about retiring. No, Cary loved to travel.
The couple board a freighter for Asia, stopping to visit GIs wounded in the Korean War.
And it was only because Hitchcock asked for him specifically and sent him that great script of To Catch a Thief that he did come back. The studio had wanted Jimmy Stewart. But Hitchcock said, no, I want Cary. And they got him.
He returns to work with the director, who guaranteed both Grace Kelly and the French Riviera as his co-stars.
One of the movies that really illustrates that everything has come together perfectly for Cary Grant is To Catch a Thief. Here's Hitchcock at his light entertainment best. Here's the exquisitely beautiful Grace Kelly at the peak of her gorgeousness, and Cary Grant playing a cat burglar. And it's just light. We don't have too much of a mental challenge here. We're just going to have fun.
You've got an opener?
Do you want a leg or a breast?
You make the choice.
In private life, he was a totally unsophisticated man. He didn't know zilch about wines. He didn't go to parties very much. And his idea of a great meal was sausage and mash in an English pub. So there was this great schism between the person we saw and imagined him to be, a guy in a tuxedo drinking a martini, and the real Cary.
You know as well as I do, this necklace is imitation.
Well, I'm not.
The film is a huge hit, and Grant leaves suburbia behind and returns to the suave rake the public has come to love.
Here at 20th Century Fox Studio, Cary Grant, Deborah Carr, and director Leo McCarey discuss their newest production, An Affair to Remember.
An Affair to Remember is an awfully powerful story. The original picture is overall a better picture. McCarey always thought it was a better picture, but the plot is pretty irresistible.
Half comedy, half tragedy, the story of ill-fated lovers is practically a shot-by-shot remake of director Leo McCarey's own 1939 love affair.
I have a telephone call for you from Paris.
Mr. Ferretti, would you autograph this?
I hadn't seen one attractive woman on the ship since we left. Now, isn't that terrible? I was alarmed. I said to myself, don't beautiful women travel anymore? And then I saw you, and I was saved. I hope.
Tell me, have you been getting results with a line like that?
Even when he was having fun and laughing and making jokes, at which he was excellent at.
Order the bouillabaisse, it's superb.
Merci, mille fois.
Pas de quoi.
Oh, shut up.
There was still this remoteness, there was still this keeping something a secret.
At the film's climax, a stoic Grant discovers Carr missed their rendezvous because of a terrible accident.
Cary was a devout believer in keeping to and following the kind of image that you have built up. He always kept Cary Grant.
Why didn't you tell me? If it had to happen to one of us, why did it have to be you?
There was a most unexpected vulnerability in Cary. If I said fear, that wouldn't be right. But he was wary of relationships with women.
Betsy Drake had now been married to Grant for 7 years. During that time, she had shown considerable talent as a writer, and after working on several radio programs, Drake completed the screenplay to Houseboat. Grant took the project to Paramount as a third vehicle for the couple to star in, hoping to lock down a director before leaving for his next film.
I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Spain. I'm going to make a picture called The Pride and the Passion with Frank Sinatra and some new Italian girl.
Grant arrives in Spain and quickly begins an affair with the 23-year-old Sophia Loren.
I asked him about Sophia and him on The Pride and the Passion. He said, yeah, well, we tore up a few bull rings in Spain, I can tell you that. That was evidently a very dynamic affair. He was crazy about her. I think she was a bit the girl that got away.
We got a call from Cary. He says, I just met the new Garbo. Would it be much of a change to change the heroine of your story to an Italian girl? And we tore up the script, immediately hung up the phone. There was no way that would work.
Drake was told nothing, as both script and cast were altered at Grant's request.
If I had any sense, I would have realized how much Cary didn't love me. He didn't.
Betsy never complained about anything. She never asked for a credit because we had changed her story so much.
Meanwhile, Grant's affair with Loren came to a bitter end before shooting in Spain was over. Now contractually obligated to co-star in the reworked Houseboat, Grant tried to back out of the film altogether.
Before the picture started, I held a peace conference. Basically, I said, you know, I know what your problems are. I know what's been going on. Cary agreed to go through with the film, feeling that if he did, he might have a chance of getting back with Sophia. He tried, and the only way she finally got rid of him was to marry Carlo Ponti.
You shake up.
What's the matter? You scared?
Yes, I'm scared.
Chicken.
We had the scene where he was supposed to be dancing with Sophia in the nightclub. What came through for me, of course, was the battle that was going on between the two of them at that moment. But it didn't matter because the audience interpreted it as love. It was very, very tough on the picture because of the relationship between the two of them. It created a lot of tension. By the time the picture finished, he had me in the hospital. I had an ulcer.
When he heard that Sophia Loren was going to write her autobiography, he begged her not to mention him. Because she did mention him, and that was the end of that friendship.
When he told me, it was a big shock. If I'd had any self-respect, I would have, I don't know, kicked him in the teeth and walked out. But I didn't.
Surprisingly, the couple stay together as Grant begins production on what is arguably the highlight of his screen career.
You didn't have to introduce that character at length. Bingo. You knew who he was, you were on his side, and you took the trip with him.
No, we didn't have any rehearsal. This is Cary Grant, you're going to fall in love with him. This is Eve Marie, you're going to fall in love with her. And you start.
The adventure and the suspense was very important to it. I wanted to do the Hitchcock picture to end all Hitchcock pictures.
We think of that film as a journey from New York City across country, ending up in South Dakota at Mount Rushmore. It's actually a journey through Cary Grant's various persona aspects and of all the career things that he's done over the years.
A seamless blend of romance, comedy, and suspense, North by Northwest begins production on August 26, 1958.
The beauty of the plot is that even though you say this is absurd, this is totally improbable, you're completely caught up in it.
You don't need a rich script development. The door opens, it's Cary Grant, and everybody knows who and what that is.
Hitchcock loved to put people who seem to be in such control of their lives and themselves in the beginning of the film, and then it all falls apart. We're all in jeopardy because people in the audience think, oh, he's got it made. Whoa, he doesn't have it made, you know. He's being kidnapped.
Hey, wait a minute, what's that supposed to be?
Car's waiting outside. You will walk between us saying nothing.
Hitch thought the whole thing was a comedy, essentially. You know, he says, why, the whole thing's a fantasy. I mean, there's not even any such thing as North by Northwest.
Oh, come on, fellas. What is this, a joke or something?
Yes, a joke. We will laugh in the car. Come.
He was a wonderful light comedian, and he was funny as hell in North by Northwest.
Not that I mind a slight case of abduction now and then, but I have tickets for the theater this evening to a show I was looking forward to. And I get, well, kind of unreasonable about things like that.
With such expert play acting, you make this very room a theater.
For their final film together, director and star are perfectly in sync.
I think they were both jealous of each other a little bit. I mean, Hitch could never be Cary Grant, and Cary could never do what Hitch had done with his great career. They were two very big stars.
Cary had an apartment at the Plaza in New York City, so the scene where he walks across the lobby, he just walked across the lobby, didn't have any direction, and Hitchcock said, why should I direct him? He's done this. He has an apartment upstairs.
Cary said to me, I was like a baby. I could fold myself up as if I was in a fetal position, and whatever he said, I would do, and he was always right.
Grant's trust in his director led to one of the most iconic scenes in American film.
There's a scene where Cary Grant is sent out into the countryside. Now, you know, it's a setup for him to be shot. And Cary Grant gets out of a bus and stands there. Now, the audience is saying, well, it's perfectly normal. What can happen here?
Part of the wonderful amusement of the famous crop dusting sequence is how perfectly he's dressed and who he is. He's Cary Grant being attacked by an airplane and throwing himself into corn stalks. If it were any other actor, it would have just been a physical menace. It wouldn't be so acutely funny.
I don't know exactly how I came to make a hospital room scene, almost comedy.
Stop!
Oh, excuse me.
Stop.
We even have a moment that addresses the charm, the lure of the real Cary Grant.
Has anyone ever told you that you overplay your various roles rather severely, Mr. Kaplan?
Apparently, the only performance that'll satisfy you is when I play dead.
Cary worried. He was a worrier. He worked at what he did, and he worked hard. I was very impressed with how prepared he was and how disciplined he was.
He set such a high standard. He was the first one there, the last one to leave, knew his lines, expected everybody, crew, all of us, to be right on the button.
Come on, I've got you. Up.
I can't make it.
Yes, you can. Go.
As film critic Pauline Kael wrote, he was cast as Cary Grant, and he gave a performance as Cary Grant.
Every time I ran into him, he'd say, you know, all the films I've done and all the films you've done, Martin, we did something right with that one. For some reason, that picture struck a chord more than anything I've ever done. People bring that picture up. We did something right.
Our marriage had broken up, but we were still living together. I have tried yoga, I've tried God, nothing works. I told this one friend the despair I was in, and she said, well, you should try LSD. And it was completely legal, and it was extraordinary, absolutely amazing.
The drug is administered as an alternative to traditional therapy, and Drake begins regular treatments with Dr. Mortimer Hartman. Contrary to popular belief, Grant follows for less than therapeutic reasons.
He went in to find out from Moore Hartman what I was saying. He didn't think he had to find himself. He found himself, for God's sakes. He didn't think he was lost.
Grant is convinced to try the drug as well, and immediately becomes a vocal proponent, undergoing over 100 sessions before LSD is outlawed in 1966.
I was hiding behind all kinds of defenses, hypocrisies, and vanities. I had to get rid of them layer by layer. That moment when your conscious meets your subconscious is a hell of a wrench.
And I said, I'm leaving you today. And he said, you can't do that. I'm making a movie. And I said, I'm leaving you.
After numerous separations, the couple finally divorce in 1962.
After 3 unsuccessful marriages, either something was wrong with me or civilization. I'm not proud of my marriage record. It was not the fault of Hollywood, but my own inadequacies and my mistrust of constancy.
The following year, Grant was at a crossroads over his next project.
Peter Stone and I worked on the script, and I sent it to Cary, and he turned us down. He said no, and I was sick. I said, why? And he said he was doing a picture with Howard Hawks.
Man's favorite sport. There was a lot of young women in it, and Cary backed out. Hawks said, well, every time I see you, you've got a younger girl on your arm. And Cary said, well, that's different. Doesn't want to be seen that way in the movie.
We had breakfast, and he said, is that script still available? And I said, yes. And he said, well, if you still want me, I'd like to do it. And I said, yes, definitely, I still want you.
What are you doing in here?
I'm having a nervous breakdown.
Well into his 3rd decade of leading ladies, Grant co-stars opposite Audrey Hepburn, who is 25 years his junior. He makes only one request before shooting begins.
One thing that he said, I'm a bit old to be chasing a girl, let's let her chase me.
Reggie?
Got you.
Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn are walking along the Seine, and she has an ice cream cone.
You know, this is good. Want some?
No, thanks.
That's all. Perfect. Unruffable.
We took all the chances. The money belongs to us, not to him.
Now, don't be piggy, Herman.
He would say, always remember that you are a product. He said, a Cary Grant cannot do this, and this. A Cary Grant must do that. He talked about himself in the third person. And I said, that's fabulous to be able to differentiate the real guy from this image he's created.
Do you know what's wrong with you?
No, what?
Nothing.
He's not even a person anymore. He's this godlike figure, you know. He's sheer mythology in charade.
Well, when you come on, don't you?
Well, come on.
In the early 60s, Grant sees 23-year-old Diane Cannon on television and contacts her. The two begin dating and marry in early 1965.
When Cary married Diane Cannon, I thought that was the oddest couple I'd ever even thought of, you know. Never would have thought he would have been attracted to her.
Cary did anything that she seemed to want, to please her. I felt he was more in love with her than the other way around.
In direct contrast to his home life, Grant is shrewd enough to realize he can no longer continue as a romantic leading man. In 1965, he leaves for Japan to star in his final film.
Oh, I came about sharing the apartment. How do you do?
How do you do?
You see, this card was on the bulletin board at the embassy.
But you're a man.
Yes, I suppose so.
I prefer sharing an apartment with a woman.
So do I.
What was really brilliant about Cary was that in working in such close quarters, every set was very, very small.
It'll save you all the bother of transferring your things from the other room.
Us youngsters watched him, followed him, and got into his brilliant comedic timing and his examples literally by being with him and watching him.
Given the persona he has, that there is no future for it as he ages. Instead of turning into the Charles Coburn old father figure, he gave us Cary Grant. Perfect. He wrapped him up and left him where we needed him to be and where he needed him to be.
Let's face it, this was an illusion that he created, and Cary wasn't going to wreck that. That was his life's work, really. So at a certain point, he said, it's time to quit.
After 72 films, Grant walks away, ending his career with no announcement.
You can never go back. It's not possible. I could make another film, but I'd be playing a different man. It would have been a great disappointment for an audience to see.
We were going to the first AFI Lifetime Achievement Award. It was for John Ford. And we came up to this table where you had to hand in your ticket. And Cary walks up to the lady and says, I'm terribly sorry, I forgot my ticket. May I get in, please? And the woman doesn't look up. She says, name? And he says, Cary Grant. Now she looks up at him. She says, you don't look like Cary Grant. He says, I know, nobody does. Yeah, he was right. Nobody did look like Cary Grant, including him. You couldn't.
Grant turns all his attention to his latest project. At the age of 62, he becomes a father with the birth of his daughter, Jennifer.
He, I think, had wanted to have children beforehand, but for one reason or another had not. Part of it, he said, was his own selfishness. He was too involved in his own career.
That changed him a great deal, much more than his wives did. Well, I think he discovered paternal love, which he'd never known about, and it was a surprise to him.
The disparity in age between Grant and Cannon lead to mounting problems.
She was a spirited woman, and she didn't want to put up with Cary's slightly autocratic way of talking. He didn't like women to wear makeup, and she would put makeup on, and he'd take it off. And she just got fed up with it.
Although overjoyed with Jennifer, the couple reach a breaking point, and Cannon moves out. Grant had made an art of keeping his private life closely guarded, but in 1968 he's thrown into a highly public divorce. While Cannon levels accusations to the press, Grant refuses to respond.
After Diane and he divorced, his time with Jennifer was very limited. And obviously at the back of his mind was also his time was probably limited because of his age. So he wanted to spend as much time as he possibly could with her.
That same year, Grant is appointed to the board of directors of Fabergé, the perfume and cosmetics company, in a move that surprises many.
That was a very interesting arrangement because he wasn't interested in money. By then, Diane Cannon was traveling around the country, filming, and Cary wanted a private plane at his disposal so he could drop everything and at a moment's notice get on that plane and go wherever he had to go to be with Jennifer.
In 1970, Grant is thrilled to learn that the Academy has chosen to award him for what they term his unique mastery of the art of screen acting. He is deeply moved by the audience's reaction.
Well, I want to thank you very much for signifying your approval of this. I shall cherish it until I die, because probably no greater honor can come to any man than the respect of his colleagues. Thank you. So long.
Keeping public appearances to a minimum, Grant has a knack for combining business with personal interests. He joins the boards of other corporations, including MGM and Hollywood Park.
When I got to know Cary, he was the youngest 80-year-old I ever met, and we were sitting at the track, and he said, "Ralph, would you like to take a walk?" He had the coolest, youngest walk, and so sprightly. It sort of inspired me to say, remember what you just saw, because that was really great.
Despite his age, Grant still travels the world for Fabergé.
Fabergé had a trade show in London every year, and it was at the Royal Lancaster Hotel. I did the public relations at the Royal Lancaster Hotel.
47 years younger, Barbara marries Grant after a 2-year courtship.
I never, ever envisaged having any form of a relationship other than friendship with him. But because he was such an extraordinary individual, regardless of his age, I couldn't help myself. I couldn't stop from falling in love with him. And even though I knew that that time together would probably be limited, the quality of it was extraordinarily important to me, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
It was just a beautiful thing to see how much Barbara and Cary loved each other, how at peace, how comfortable, how happy they were. They got it right.
Retired now for over a decade, Grant's personal life still continues to fascinate.
Chevy Chase on a television show made a crack that Cary was a homo. It was a stupid moment for Chevy, and he regretted it. Cary was annoyed.
He was more concerned of how Jennifer, his daughter, would feel about it, and also how I would feel about it.
He did sue Chevy, and then they settled out of court.
Grant has finally found happiness at home. The offers of awards and tributes begin in earnest, but unlike his peers, he refuses them all.
Cary hated getting up and making a public speech, and it wasn't worth the trouble, really, for him to go to something where he was meant to be awarded for something and him be so tremendously uncomfortable beforehand. So when the Kennedy Center came along and they offered him something, because he knew that he would just be able to enjoy the evening, he accepted.
I was working with Ginger Rogers on a little one-woman show that she was going to do. I wrote to Cary, and he called me 2 days later, and all he wanted to talk about was Ginger. I then felt comfortable enough to say to Cary, I would love to represent you for something like this. And he said, oh, no, I'm retired. I don't give speeches, and I don't want to do any of this.
After a year and a half of prodding, Grant finally agrees to appear before an audience in An Evening with Cary Grant.
I was very surprised. Yes, I didn't think he would do it because he had, to a certain extent, retired from public life at that stage.
His only stipulation was that no seat cost more than $25.
Grant returns to his roots, appearing in theaters he had played on the vaudeville circuit 60 years earlier.
It was wonderful, really quite extraordinary, to see the adoration of the audience, whether they were male, whether they were female, whether they were old or whether they were young. They were just thrilled to have Cary there.
He got a big, big kick out of doing that. Questions and answers. People in the day would all these lovely ladies with blue rinses were sitting there in front in the audience, and on he walks, looking absolutely spectacular, as he always did. And they just loved it, you know. The legend actually came to life.
He did come full circle. There's no question about it. He began in the provinces, and he ended up in the provinces.
On November the 29th, 1986, Grant is scheduled to perform in Davenport, Iowa.
That morning, he'd been in great form. We had been walking around and joking and having a wonderful time, and it was only that afternoon, when he was doing the rehearsal, that I understood that something was going wrong, because he could not focus.
Grant is taken to the hospital, where he dies of a massive stroke at 11:22 p.m.
He could have died in his bed at home, he could have died anywhere, but he was on the road and he was doing something that he loved to do.
Director Billy Wilder and his wife Audrey sum up the collective feeling in their telegram to Barbara. The model is gone. Who can we emulate now?
I spent the greater part of my life fluctuating between Archie Leach and Cary Grant, unsure of either, suspecting each.
He invented himself to be Cary Grant and then had to play the role of Cary Grant both on and off screen.
And the last man who said that to me was Archie Leach, just a week before he cut his throat.
Is that so?
We've been in worse jams than this, haven't we, Hildy?
Nope.
But it was an amazing thing to build that persona. He was big on inventing life for himself.
That's what made him so magnetic to me, that immeasurable amount of sheer confidence.
May I kiss you? Thank you.
I don't think Cary Grant started out to be an artist. I think along the way he realized he had to perfect what it was he did, and actually became an artist.
Who is going to follow Cary Grant? So far, nada.
I won't trouble you any more tonight. Good night.